Hello everyone, this is the part 2 of the Ielts course. Before watching this, make sure to check the part 1. I've linked it in the description box below. Moving on, we were seeing the question types in the reading section of the Ielts academic test. So let's just move on from there. Okay, so multiple choice questions would be the same way, which would be having one answer from the options which are given. So multiple choice questions are again just like how we had our the same way we had in our listening skills and the distractor. We know all this, and more than one answer. When you have more than one answer, then two of the options can be correct. So we also saw the difference between true, false, not given and yes, no, not given in the previous video. Okay, and then we had matching. So what was matching? Matching was basically matching the headings to the particular question. So like you have here, headings for each section. So the lists are given here and the sections are given here. You need to match the headings to the questions. Sometimes you have to match headings to the paragraphs. So if you have to do that, that will also be clearly given in the question. Sometimes, as the example which we just saw, you have to match the headings of sections. So sections would include more than one paragraph. So make sure to read the question very carefully. So what is the step-by-step approach? Read the first paragraph or section for gist. Ask yourself what's the main idea and read through the list of headings and make sure that that's the best heading, whatever you are choosing, and write the answer as a lowercase Roman numeral. So Roman numerals in the list of headings, you are given various Roman numerals. Make sure that you are always writing the Roman numerals in the small case. If you write it in a larger case, then it will be incorrect, even though you are logically correct about the answer, but you will be losing marks over there. This is the only task in IELTS Academic that uses Roman numerals. Okay. Next we have matching information. So you have a passage which has some certain number of paragraphs and then information and NB. You know what NB is, we've discussed that also in the earlier. NB means that you have an answer which is more than one. So that also you have to do. Okay, this also I have discussed yesterday, discussed in the previous video. Okay, then we have something which is known as matching sentence endings. Now, what do you really understand by matching sentence ending? Let's go to see that. So we have to complete the sentence with the correct form of ending, right? So like Blizzard and Stewart believe that a substandard diet results from having to eat a broader range of, so whatever the answer is, let's not get into that. So you have to complete the sentence and the options are given in the particular box. Very simple, basic stuff. Now remember that for this task the questions always follow the same order. So this is something which is more or less true to all the questions which would be tested in your IELTS exam, that the order of the passage or the order of the listening skill passage would be in the order of the questions itself. So that is something which should be in your mind since the starting. What are the steps? Look at the first part of the sentence. Scan from the top of the passage until you find the main idea where this particular sentence is given. Read that part of passage very carefully. Read through the sentence endings. For number 2, resume scanning the passage and so on. So the approach would be clearer to you when we do the questions. Sentence completions. Now sentence completions means that you are supposed to complete the sentence with a desirable number of words, and the desirable number of words would be given in the question itself. So whenever you are beginning with a question like this, please make a note of the number of words which is expected from you and do not exceed the limit. Okay, that's your sentence completion. And the approach for sentence completion would be look at the first sentence and identify the main idea. So again, the same way, make sure that your grammatical error should not exist. Okay, and note making. So you know what note making is, we have discussed that as well. Okay, so remember that for this task the questions do not always follow the same order like the information is presented. Until now we have been seeing that all of the questions and all of the tasks were following the sequence. But when it comes to note making, it might differ in the passage, because the passage is given to you right in front of you. You already have the passage, so there is something that the examiner has to do, right, to make it a little bit tricky. So since notes are made in a concise format, so it might a little bit differ. So that is something you need to keep in mind. Here it is a reading passage. Remember that these are notes, so often use note form. So we have discussed that in note forms we do not have a and the, which are the articles, and we do not have the auxiliary verbs as well, right? Look at the first question and make sure you understand the idea. Scan the passage, look for it, and then you are supposed to fill in the blank. And then we have the flowchart completion, again similarly like we have discussed in the listening skill. And again, even here they do not always follow the procedural format or the structural format as given in the question, so that is something to keep in mind. So I think you can do it very easily if you have clearly read the passage, and if the passage is right in front of you, you can read it n number of times. So that gives, even though right, you need to keep in mind the timing, but in general you can read it a number of times, so that is something which might give you an added advantage. Whereas when you talk about the listening skills, you are going to be allowed to read to listen to the audio only once, and that is the reason that they are following a particular sequence, whereas here they are not following any particular sequence. Flowcharts might also use note form, and now we are very clear what a note form is. It does not include the articles and the auxiliary verbs. Look at the first question, understand the main idea, think about it, and scan from the passage. Next we come to table completion. So these also can be the answers could be found from the passage itself, and even in this form they do not really follow the order. Okay, and then we have the diagram completion. So here also labeling is being tested. And then we have summary completion, and in summary completion sometimes there are answers which are given in the box, so you need to use it and fill that. So that's it with my IELTS academic reading section as well. So we have done listening, we have discussed all of the type of questions which might be tested in listening as well as the reading section. Now we move on to the writing section. Okay, so again here we have 60 minutes, and the number of tasks which are given to you are 2. The first one is at least 150 words, and the second one is at least 250 words. And for the first one you are basically given 20 minutes, as well as whereas the task 2 would be expected to be completed by 40 minutes. Okay, so what's the difference between the task 1 and the task 2? The task 1, you are assessed on task achievement. That means how well you have followed the task. So to get a high band score, you should follow the instructions and not include any irrelevant information, and not speculate on the data you are presented with. In task 2, you are assessed on how the task is responded to. So it measures how you've covered all parts of the task. So in the task 1, you are expected to write something on what you are seeing. Whatever they have given to you, you are supposed to write on it, and you are supposed to describe the image which they have given, the graph they have given, or something like that. Whereas in task 2, they want to see your opinion, they want to see your personal opinion and the way you express yourself. So that's the difference between both the tasks. Okay, coherence and cohesion. Coherence refers to how well your ideas are connected to each other. So that is what coherence means. Coherence means that the ideas should be connected to each other, and how logically your writing flows. So is your writing logical in nature, and is it going with the flow, and are you making any sort of grammatical errors and all of that. So coherence is basically the connectivity between the words, right? Lexical resource. Again, lexical resource is, whenever they talk about that, they are referring to the kind of vocabulary you have, or what kind of words you are using, and what kind of accurate usage of the vocabulary, And then we have grammatical range and accuracy. So obviously they want to see whether you are making any sort of grammatical errors or not. For IELTS academic on paper, you must write your response on the answer sheet. For both the paper and computer based versions of IELTS academic, you should write your answers in full sentences and paragraphs. So you need to write it full and complete. If not, you will be losing marks. You lose marks if you use numbered lists or bullet points. You can make notes on the question paper, but then when you are submitting the answer, it needs to be in paragraphs only. Otherwise, you will lose marks. And they are not interested to see any sort of note making, right? They want to see a full-fledged essay, right? So how do they basically mark it? Task 1 and Task 2 are assessed independently by two different examiners. Task 2 is worth more than the Task 1, and you also remember when we discussed the pattern, the marking scheme is also more for the Task 2 as compared to the Task 1. Okay. Alright, you can pause the video and you can read how they are going to mark your answer, but I don't want to discuss this. I hope you understood how you need to write. So this is something which would be more practically understood when we look at the example, so I don't think there's any point of reading that. Alright, so what are the tips for the IELTS academic writing test? Use formal academic English. So please use full forms and full words, and don't use any sort of contractions. By contractions I mean short forms such as don't, right? Do not write can't, right? Cannot. Use full forms and do not use contractions in your IELTS paper. I can't emphasize on this enough. You are not supposed to be using contractions in your answer sheet. So make sure to keep that in your mind until you finish writing the paper. Make sure that you remember me saying this over and over again, that do not use contractions in your paper. And you need to use linking words and phrases which are academically appropriate. And in terms of punctuation, we never use exclamation marks in formal academic writing. So keep that in mind. Don't use exclamation marks. If you are using exclamation marks, it means it is informal in nature. You are not supposed to be using exclamation marks in your academic writing. Look at it. It's not just a writing skill. It's an academic writing. So they're testing that, right? And only use semicolons if you're confident you can use them well or accurately. If you do not know how to use semicolons, don't use it. You don't have to use these kind of punctuations if you do not know where to use them, right? Divide your writing into paragraphs. You need to write them into a paragraph. Do not make it a very big, lengthy one single paragraph. Break it down into paragraphs. You can have something like, let's say you have an introductory paragraph, and then you have two main body paragraphs, and the last paragraph is going to be having conclusion or something like that. So you have to divide your work into paragraphs. Make sure to do that, and don't do the entire thing in one single paper. One single para, sorry. So make sure that you have fully understood the question before you start writing. So first, read the question thoroughly, think of the pointers, and spend some time on the topic and try to think about it for a while. And after you've thought about it, and then when you've made some points on your rough paper or your question paper and your mind, that's when you begin writing. Don't just start writing, because you'll be losing out on a lot of time if you do so. Make sure that you write enough. Please look at the word limit before attempting any question. If they want you to write 150 words, you have to write 150 words, not less and not more. The word at least in the instructions mean you can write more than 150 words, and more than 250 words means more than that but not less. Before you start writing, note down the key points. So that's what I've been discussing until now. And then you have to leave some time. So make sure that you complete the task early, because you need time to recheck your answers. Okay, so you can read this. How to do each task type. So let's just talk about the task 1 in specific first. So as I told you, in the task 1, they want to see how you are going to describe the data which they are giving it to you. Are you able to logically think about what they gave, and are you able to convert that into paragraph material and present it to the examiner? So in the task number 1, you would be given one or more graphs, or let's say you will be given some sort of a table or charts or diagrams or maps or plans, and you are basically expected to describe, summarize, or explain the information which is given in a visual format. So graphs, charts and tables present data or numbers for you to describe. Don't worry, it will not be very mathematical in nature. It would be very general so that everybody can do the question. They just want to look at how you are going to describe it. A diagram might present a process or an object for you to describe. So everything would be given as it is in the diagram. What you have to do is take it and write it down. Okay. Plans might show how a building has changed or how it will change in the future, and maps might show how an area has changed or how it will be changing in the future. So the instructions for writing task 1 always tell you to summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features. So main features, this is the key word in this, right? So what are main features? Main features are basically the most important and the most obvious points. So with data in graphs and charts, small differences are usually less relevant than large differences. Okay, so whenever a graph is given in the question, or whenever some sort of a chart is basically given, you need to make sure that you are emphasizing on the larger differences and not the smaller differences, right? In task 1, you should never express your personal opinion or feelings about the information in the graph, chart, diagram, etc. Keep this in your mind. They do not want to test your intellectual ability in the first question. They don't want to see your thinking process. They don't want to see your opinions or views. They want you to simply put across the content which they have given as it is. So in the task number 1, don't try to put your opinions. Whatever opinion you want to give, that would be taken that is most welcome in the task number 2, but do not do that in the task number 1. Okay, such as whether you feel it's positive or negative or surprising. So you don't have to say that the percentage change was this much and I think that is a lot. No, who told you that it's a lot? If it's mentioned in the para, only then you can say all that. If it's mentioned in the question, only then you are allowed to say that. Don't say that. Don't make assumption of your own, right? In other words, you shouldn't say this might be because. A possible reason for this increase is because. Nobody asks for those kind of opinions. Only present the objective facts which are given in the chart. Alright, so don't show your own smartness in these kind of questions. So what are the step-by-step approach when it comes to the graph, chart and tables? Read the instructions. So when you read the instructions, you are going to understand what the information is exactly about. Select and note down the key information or findings. Make a paragraph. Start your piece of writing with the introduction, right? And that introduction is going to basically describe what the information is about. After that, you are expected to give an overview. So the overview basically presents the most noticeable and important findings. So that would be expected from you in the second, and then you have to go into more detail and you have to describe what else is given, and you have to make comparisons wherever it is required or wherever it is appropriate. Make sure that whatever you are writing, everything is given in the test, in the question, because you don't want to be making your own conclusions. Okay, take a moment and read this. Till then, I'll see the next concept I have to teach. Okay, To make any additional points you want to make about the information, describe the general trends and etc. Finish your piece of writing with a short summary, so make sure that you have a conclusion body always included in your writing article, which repeats the information and from the overview in different words. You haven't finished until you've checked you met the word limit or not. So make sure that you always check that after you're done with your paper, you haven't made any mistakes with spelling. So if you make any sort of spelling mistakes, or if you make any punctuation mistakes, and if you make any grammar mistakes, then you would be losing your marks. And you also have to check if the information that you have given is factually accurate. Now, what I mean by factually accurate, that should be given by them in the diagram. Your writing is formal academic English. Formal academic English. No contractions, no explanation, exclamation marks. Okay. Timing for graphs, charts, and tables. So, how are you supposed to divide the 20 minutes which are allotted to you in these kind of questions? First, you need to understand the graphic that is given in your paper, and you need to understand the task that is expected from you. After that, you are going to basically select the information and then organize the information. And then you are going to write about it. So when you are starting to write about it, you need to break down the content into this following topics: introduction, overview, detail, summary, and then you are going to check what is given in the question. Okay. How to write an opening paragraph for the questions which would be given to you in the task number 1, task type 1. So the first or 1 or 2 sentences of your answer should be an introduction. So make sure to keep in mind that the first 1 or 2 sentences should be an introduction. So please make sure that it is going to be an introduction, because if they are not introduction, then you would be automatically losing some of your marks. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind. So what do I mean by introduction? Introduction means what exactly the chart is explaining. You are going to start it off with like that. So that we would be discussing many examples in the further part, so don't worry about that. The information you need for this is a question and a graph. So don't just copy word for word. Try to rephrase it wherever possible. So this is where you are supposed to be doing your paraphrasing. Do not use a paraphrasing skill in any of the listening skills or the reading skills. You can use them in your writing skills, because here they are actually trying to test your writing ability. After you've explained what the graph is about, you should give an overview of the main findings of the data in general terms. In other words, you should write about the most noticeable feature, right? So whatever they will be given, we'll see questions, you will be able to understand that. Okay, after that you are going to go to the detail in the information. So when I say detail in the information, that means I'm going to be more specific about the years, date ranges, percentages, numbers and amounts. After this, you are going to connect everything and you are going to fit them logically together. And then when you are making the points in the opening paragraph or anywhere in your task 1 writing, please don't speculate and don't give your own opinions. Whatever you are doing, everything should be there factually from the diagram. Only present factual information that's shown in the graph. We don't express your opinion or feelings. Example graph. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task. The graph below shows the percentage of female workers and workers age 50 or above in the UK workforce. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So write at least 150 words here. So you are given this graph in the question. You can see a little bit. Let's try to understand. Women are given over here, aged 50, and proportion of the UK people. And you can see that during the 1970, women were just 37%. Now they have come up to 47%. So you have to talk about this, something which is given factually in the particular question. Understanding information when faced with a question like this one. The first thing to do is the information in general terms. So the instructions will help you with this. Read them carefully. Here it says, the graph below shows the percentage of female workers and workers aged 50 and above in the UK workforce. this was given in the instructions of the question. So you need to read the instructions question also very carefully, because that is going to give you your introductory line. What you have to do, you just have to paraphrase the instructions line, and you will be getting your first two lines of your paragraph, right? So if you look at the graph also, there is also a heading at the top which uses the word proportion. You can see on the x-axis they have got percentages rising from 0 to 50. On the y-axis we've got years going from 1971 to 2019. In the graph there are two lines, one for women and one for the people aged 50 and over. So we can understand that this information is about what proportion percentage of the UK workforce is women or the people aged 50 above over a number of years. Notice that the line for women isn't completely straight. It changes angle halfway along, and the aged 50 plus line starts in a different year to the women line. Also, the women line is completely above the age. So you've got 20 minutes, you have to basically describe the data which is given. Now we come to a bar chart. So the bar chart below shows the percentage of the households with access to the internet in 3 European countries. So there are 3 European countries, and they are going to show you how much access of internet they have. See, these are very simple graphs, these are very simple bar charts, so there's nothing to worry about. Whatever is given as it is, you have to put it down in a word format. Okay, now example of the introduction. The bar chart, let's read this will give you a thorough understanding. The bar chart presents data about the percentage of households with internet access in Germany, Spain and the UK over a period of 13 years, from 2017 to 2007 to 2019. Very simple, crisp introduction, which included the entire gist, right? Example of the overview. One of the most noticeable features is that in all 3 European countries, the number of households with internet access increased throughout the period. Additionally, in every year shown in the bar chart, Germany has had the highest percentage, followed by the UK and the Spain. So that would be understood by seeing the chart. Then we come to the details. The percentage of Spanish households with internet access increased more dramatically than the other two countries throughout the period, from just over 40% in 2007 to 90% in 2019. Now, this is an example of presenting information which is more detailed in nature, right? So, a general trend is described, that means the dramatic increase in percentage. This is compared with other countries, right? And so, these are very basic things. And whatever specific numbers or numerals which are given in the question, make sure to use that and to put that in your own answer as well. Then you have the summary. All three countries showed an increase in the number of households with internet access over the 13-year period. So this is the entire paragraph which is being summarized. So make sure to structure your work in such a manner. Now we have what a pie chart is. The pie chart shows different platforms used for international news content by people in the United Kingdom in 2019. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So you can see the amount of what platform is used and how much percentage is used. We can see that the television is the most used kind of platform, whereas word of mouth is the least. See, within 2 minutes I was able to figure out the gist of the paragraph. So that's how you are supposed to do, and you need to compare the data which is given. So let's see what kind of words you are supposed to be using in your answer. So when you are comparing something, you need to use larger, largest, or something like whereas, similarly, and double, half. So you need to be using words like these in your work. And then we have the table. So a table is given wherein GP appointment attendance in the UK is given, and there are total appointments and the appointments which are attended and the appointments which have been missed. So you are supposed to basically describe the data which has been presented in a tabular format, and I think it is okay. Pause the video and read this if you are not if you are not aware of tables, but I think you all might be. Okay. Now let's also see some of the important language which we have to use when we are presenting data from graphs, charts and table. At 6 o'clock between 2007 and 20, during the period from each or every year, from this year to this year, in 2019, in March, over a period of throughout the period. Okay, when we're talking about ages, 18 to 29-year-olds, 25-year-olds, people aged 30 to 44, the over 65s, that means the people who are above the age of 65, women age 65 or above, amounts 25% off or just 25%, a quarter, from 25% to 50%, half off, in total, minority off, majority off, three quarters, two thirds, comparisons, far greater than, followed by, in a similar way, in a similar manner, in all three countries, in comparison to, overtake. Overtake means something which is larger than the previous one, respectively. So, which respectively means as compared, like when I use a word like the figures were 10 and 20 for Raju and Rohan respectively. That means 10 was for Raju and 20 was for Rohan, right? So that's the way you are going to be using the term respectively. Highest, lowest, percentage, the most or the least. So these are words which you have to be using in your graphs, right? Trends. Decline means deduction, decrease, double, drop, fall, half. Half means reduced by half, increase, rise, trends again. Considerable, which means there is a large extent. Dramatically, which means there is a magnificent. Gradually, which means there is a slow and steady movement. Major, minor, sharp, slightly, suddenly. Continue, remain, stable, static. Static means stuck in a particular range. Steady, about, almost, approximately, around, just less, more than, just over, under, more than half, roughly. These are the kind of words which are to be used by you when you are writing the answer. Okay, and then we have what is the percentage. So in task 1 you aren't tested on your mathematical ability, however you may need to describe and compare percentages, right? So under 12s with smartphones last year were 10% and this year they are 20%. It is not correct to say that the number has increased by 10%. In fact, it has doubled, right? So don't say that it has increased by 10%. You have to say that it has doubled. Okay, so you have to use these kind of sentences. Now we also have a diagram. So we have questions wherein a diagram like this would be given and you are expected to explain it. Okay, you might not know what a zooplankton means, but it is given in the diagram, so you can just use it. Take a pause and read this entire thing. Okay, so you need to use first of all initially, and then afterwards following on from that, following that, once that step is complete, subsequently, then this being done, eventually, finally, in the end. So these are the kind of keywords which you need to be using, right? And then you also have another type of question. Here a procedure is not given, a thing is given and the body parts are also given. So you need to understand the object which is given and you need to write on the you need to basically write about the object. And then you have the maps. Now map is also going to be again like the listening skills one, so it is alright, don't worry about that. So now these are the tenses which are to be kept in mind, which are to be kept in mind, so make sure to understand this. Pause the video and read this as well.